That will bring in Aaron Evans with Winning Republican Strategies. Terry Schilling is the president of the American Principles Project. Aaron, starting with you, why make this video?
That is a phenomenal question. I mean, ultimately, I think uh, the video is very reminiscent of multiple speeches during her candidacy, where it's even the coherency of what she's trying to say is kind of in question. But, I mean, ultimately, look, I think you've got this video. You've also got, the clip where Walls is talking about how troubling and dangerous it is that President Trump won. And, I mean, just continuing to double down on some of the same failed, non-message and rhetoric that ultimately cost both of them their election. And it's time to move on and be problem solvers instead of whiners.
A lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on. Let's listen to another clip. This one is Harris talking about retaining power.
I just have to remind you, don't you ever let anybody take your power from you. You have the same power that you did before November 5th. And you have the same purpose that you did. And you have the same ability to engage and inspire. So don't ever let anybody or any circumstance take your power from you.
So, Terry, the audience for this is the DNC. They didn't have a primary. They had some power to do things a little bit differently. That was kind of my first reaction when she said that. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's all just coping, right? I've had these conversations with my friends after rough weeks and rough days, after we've had several beers, and we sound exactly the same. But this is all just coping, because what happened is the Democrats were not an incompetent bunch. They had so much power. They control most of America's elite institutions. Kamala Harris was not incompetent. She raised over $1 billion for her campaign. That's double what Hillary Clinton raised. Unfortunately, what they're unable to do is to cope with the fact that their policy proposals are so radical and so unpopular with the American people. They have to do videos like this. It's really embarrassing, and someone around her that's close to her should pull her off of the camera like this.
Well, that's one of the biggest criticisms is the staff. Why would they let her do that? That video wasn't good. The video wasn't needed. She doesn't really represent the Democratic Party, though. Maybe that's the part where you're out of touch, and we say that because she only campaigned for 3 months. It was the incumbent that was moving forward in this process until that disastrous debate happened. And stepping up in this moment 3 weeks later, why? And it didn't come across well. Even business mogul Kevin O'Leary delivering a scathing reality check on why Kamala Harris lost, giving this brutal critique. We have it.
We will anoint this faulted, broken candidate who was inconsequential in her vice presidency, lost in 2019, as you detailed, complete loser in 2020, never could articulate anything, had no compassion for people and her own advocates. She went on to The View. All those women wanted her to win. They threw her a softball. They threw her a second softball. She was so weak as a candidate, she couldn't even answer that she would do something different. It ricocheted around the world. She was finished.
And even with that, and there's a vast majority that agree with just about every word that you're hanging on to from Kevin O'Leary there. But even with that, someone still said, hey, we need to push forward after your trip to Hawaii and put this message out. Aaron, just your thoughts and reaction that happened on CNN in that clip.
No, look, I mean, I think he was spot on. And I think, it's actually been fascinating to see the changes that have even been occurring since this historic election for President Trump, with CNN even pivoting more to the right with some of the commentary that they're allowing. MSNBC, Comcast coming out and saying that they're getting rid of MSNBC. So, I mean, I think we're seeing some major shifts even in some of the left-wing cable and news channels because of the American people's voice. And I think, look, this actually echoes, I think, the probably in an opposite way, but, what the vice president was saying. People's voice does have power in America. And I think ultimately people's voice was heard very loudly, and the power of that voice is not echoing the failed policies and the progressive wokeism that the vice president has advocated for, but it's the opposite. And I think we're seeing that impact already on CNN and MSNBC, and some of these channels are frankly struggling with almost going broke because the American people are sick of the direction that's being shoved down their throat. So it's pretty fascinating.
In a recent podcast, Vice President Harris's top campaign aides admitting their own internal polling during the campaign never had Harris ahead of Trump. Let's listen to that.
We were behind. I mean, I think it surprised people because there was these public polls that came out in late September, early October, showing us with leads that we never saw.
So the senior advisor adding internal polling didn't change much throughout, if at all, throughout the election, remaining mostly static since Harris joined the race back in July. Terry, should this be any kind of surprise for anybody? I mean, if you look at what happened when she ran before, she dropped out really early.
Look, I think that the Democrats, as much power as they have in our culture with controlling academia, the lamestream media, Hollywood, and everything else, I think ultimately their biggest weakness is that their policy proposals are so extreme and unpopular. This is a party that cannot even moderate on keeping men out of women's sports. They can't even moderate on not giving kids sex change procedures or putting tampons in the boys' room. And by the way, they had their record of the border, which was a disaster. People here are getting killed. We're having our economy wiped out, and people are dying of fentanyl, right? This is absolutely disastrous. So I don't know if there was any saving this campaign. Donald Trump was very strong, and the Democrats' record was so weak.
Yeah, we'll have more throughout this broadcast. There's a lot to analyze and unpack with the entire decision, the words that were used, the presentation, all of it. Aaron Evans and Terry Schilling, enjoy your Thanksgiving, gentlemen. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.